All right, I am centered. Okay. Hello, everyone. Today, this is a topic I've touched on before on my channel. So it's not my first time addressing this. However, it is my first time addressing this in this series. So I've done random videos about this topic, but not as part of Fallen World. So, all right, let's get into this. So this was just a random thing because I feel like it's relevant. It comes up, and it comes up randomly. It comes up when you're listening to the news or hearing about politics. You hear a lot about it from the right-wing people, I think, for the most part. They try to make it sound like it's all the people on the left talk about, but in reality, they're the ones talking about it more in a negative sense. So, you hear about it a lot, either way, and sometimes it just comes up in your everyday life because you run into someone who has different opinions on gender and identity and pronouns and all of that, and you find yourself face to face with this person and you don't know what to think, and you either have to change the way you view things or get into an argument with them in order to help maybe change their mind or learn to change your mind. Something's got to change because there's immediately a conflict. You think something, someone else thinks something else, and they're asking you to acknowledge what they think. So I want to help find a balance here so that we don't run into this problem all the time. So this is just for anyone watching. Here are some helpful tips to avoid being in this conflict. If you're someone who's kind of neutral, you're not really like, all this crazy gender nonsense and these left-wing radical thugs and all the crazy shit that you hear to make people on the left side of politics sound like they're subhuman. Assuming you aren't in that mentality, if you are, bear with me. If you see me as a human being, I think in a debate, the best way to approach it is to find a common ground first. Okay. Sorry, I just had to block another one of my stalker's accounts. Okay. So, I have a stalker who has like 15 million different accounts, and every week he watches my videos, even though I tell him not to. I say, leave me alone, I don't want you watching my stuff anymore, you creeped me out, you say weird shit, and he's there every day from a different account, so I just block every account as they pop up to keep him from distracting me from the topic, just so you know what I meant by that. So anyway, where was I? Yeah, in a debate. So you find a common ground first. What do we both agree on? Do we both agree that everyone deserves freedom? That's a good place to start. Find something in a debate that you both agree on, and then continue from there until you find something you disagree on. So it's like, okay, we agree everyone deserves freedom, just for example, just hypothetically. Now, how do we achieve freedom? What does freedom look like? And we keep answering those questions till eventually we disagree, and then we try to mend that disagreement. That, to me, is a proper debate that I would hope two adults would be capable of. But unfortunately, in debates, they're a lot messier than that. People get angry. They don't start with a common ground. They start by viewing the other person. There goes another one. That was a new one to me. I haven't seen that name before, but nobody else would have said that, so... Anyway. Yeah, so, let's see. People see the other person as the enemy. That's how the debate starts. You're like, oh, this person, they disagree with me on these fundamental things. They're horrible. They're insane, right? You hear all these words. They're deranged. They're insane. They say it about each other, the left and the right. you know, they really dehumanize the other person. But the thing is, it's only valid if the other person literally cannot treat you like a human. If you can't sit down with someone and find a common ground, then maybe they are. Maybe they've sacrificed the last of their humanity. And that doesn't mean they couldn't get it back, but they're at a very dangerous point where you probably don't want to be near them until they get it back, if they ever choose to. It's their choice. You can't help them, you can't do it for them. So, what that would look like is you cannot find a common ground. Maybe you believe everyone deserves freedom. That person doesn't even want to believe that. That person genuinely just wants to control other people. Maybe they're a narcissist or a sociopath. They truly believe that they are the most important thing in the world and no one else matters. The only thing other people matter for is how they can help them. Well, how is that going to benefit me? These are dangerous people. People who think this way, people who function this way, you cannot have a debate with them. You have to stay away from them until they get therapy. Um, like seriously, don't there's nothing to be helped there. But if it's someone who just happens to have some destructive, stupid, harmful opinions, but they in general are not a horrible person, then you can probably find some common ground to debate them with and figure something out. So, let's assume that you are not fully a narcissist or a sociopath, or just you have some level of empathy and compassion and understanding. Let me appeal to that and hope that you can actually see that this is not about telling anybody how to live, taking away freedom. It's about understanding what's going on so that you can live your life without being an asshole to other people. And if you are, in the category of people who are dealing with assholes, this will also help you with that. So, let's get into it. What are some tips? Okay, so what you want to do is you want to understand what the difference is between pronouns and gender. I think there's a difference. Personally, I think of gender and identity as its own topic. I don't think pronouns really have anything to do with it. I think that the only thing you could say pronouns have to do with it is that it sometimes makes people feel like their identity is valid. But the whole purpose of pronouns is to refer to someone when they aren't around. And when referring to people when they're not around, they're not going to even know what you're saying. They're not going to know what pronouns you're using, so it's really kind of weird to tell someone what pronouns to use when referring to you. Um, Especially if those pronouns are contrary to what their brain sees when they look at you. If you present as a female, for example, the way you dress, your hair, if it comes naturally for someone to want to say she when referring to you, and then you walk around and say, no, it's he, refer to me as he, it's going to confuse them. But if it's the other way around, it's the same thing. So, if you're telling someone to use a different pronoun than the one that their brain first wants to go with, it's going to be a while before they get used to it. And there's really just no reason to do that because, again, it's not going to make you feel dysphoric because they aren't using these pronouns when you're around. Why would they be talking about you and referring to you in front of you? Very, very rare situations. Maybe you happen to be in the same room, whatever, you know what I mean? It's pretty uncommon. And it's not that big of a deal. The pronoun itself does not define who you are as a person. It has nothing to do with validating or invalidating your gender. Now let's talk about before people started talking about being trans or non-binary or anything like that, back when you might just accidentally mistake a cisgender man for a cisgender woman or vice versa. You see a really masculine looking woman and you mistake her for a man. And you're like, oh, excuse me, sir. It's embarrassing, right? Aren't you like, ooh, whoops, my bad. And also, I basically just called you ugly, is what you're thinking. And vice versa. If you're like, ma'am, you're a man. And then there are some people, even in history, in the past, this isn't a new thing, who genuinely are androgynous. You look at them and you're like, you seem to have 50-50 masculine and feminine characteristics. Your hair, your voice, your face, your clothes, everything. It doesn't really lean in either direction. You're just kind of right down the middle. Now, what do you do in this instance? Do you mistake them for a man or a woman? What do you do? In this instance, if you're really that confused, you probably are going to ask them. Um, or you might refer to them with neutral pronouns, which is, in my opinion, they, them makes more sense in a hypothetical sense when you're referring to a hypothetical person rather than someone that is actually there. But I can also understand if that comes naturally, if that's what you want to say, when you really cannot figure out what someone is. And then you can just ask them. There's a polite way to do it. You can just be like, "I'm sorry, but you really are very androgynous. Are you a man or a woman?" There's there's a polite way to ask it. That might not be it, but there's options. So just do whatever doesn't feel rude in the moment. Try to be intuitive about it. Don't just jump into it with your uh, your head, if that makes sense. And if you're on the receiving end of this, be patient with people. Don't just get offended and yell at someone. Listen for if they mean well or not, because some people don't mean well. Some people are trying to insult you. They have an agenda to hurt you and insult you and degrade you and attack you, to make you feel subhuman or mentally ill and condescend. Learn to tell the difference between that and someone who genuinely just doesn't know how to handle the situation that you're putting them in by existing in a way that doesn't really fit into their worldview. It's not like they're doing it on purpose. They just don't know what to do. Has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. They do the same thing for anyone. And it's not malicious on their part. So learn how to tell the difference. Be patient with people. Um, but, you know, regarding situations where someone is trying to tell you to use pronouns that contradict what your brain says, like, you really cannot make sense of it. You're like, I really, it doesn't feel right. I don't know. I cannot see you as this or as that or whatever. Um, then, you know, the only thing that I would recommend that you do is that you try a little harder to um, either pick one. You have to either present more in the role that you want. So if you're trying to, let's say you're a trans male, right? You're trying to present as a male, put a little more energy into that. Alternatively, you can just not give a shit what other people think of you. If you're not going to put energy into presenting as a male, and you could say, my identity as a male is still valid even if I don't look like a male because we invented what a male looks like anyway and all that, then fine. Let people think of you however they want to think of you. If that's the mentality you're taking, fully own it and say, okay, I look however I look, you can think whatever you want to think about me. I know who I am either way. It is what it is. But if you care what people think about you, if you want people to see you as a man, then you know what being seen as a man looks like. So try to present more as a man. That's up to you. It's not up to other people, and you can't just force someone to think of you in a way that they're not going to think of you. It's going to put them in an awkward spot, and they're going to feel like they have a moral and ethical obligation to do what you're asking of them. But the weirdest part is that the way that we try to police each other's behavior and language, it doesn't allow room for discussion like this. It doesn't allow room for people to say, but why? Because they just immediately feel like they're in a position where they have to do it. Otherwise, they're a bad person, they're being disrespectful. And I don't think that any of that is true, necessarily. I think people who are being disrespectful on purpose are easy to distinguish from people who are they just have different opinions. So, here are my opinions on gender and identity and all of that. I think that gender can be more defined as just masculine and feminine in terms of characteristics, energy, um, and just if you think of the universe as being made up of kind of like a yin yang, where there's just these two things. There's like light and dark. Um, Everything kind of has to come together to complete. It's sort of like the light needs the dark to exist. There's masculine and there's feminine, and you see this everywhere in everything. Um, there's a lot of evidence behind that if you want to do your own research, but just for now, take my word for it. There's masculine and there's feminine, and these two things come together to create the universe. They kind of depend on one another in the same way that you can't have a shadow without a light. You know what I'm talking about? So, um, the same logic applies in creating life. You need masculine and feminine parts in order to produce a new life. Um, and that comes in the form of biology, but biology is just one of many things. Gender, masculine and feminine, finds its way into all sorts of things, and it isn't just physical biology. It's also physical biology, but it's also behavior, characteristics. There's gender even in like fruit, which was an interesting thing to learn. But even if you are, by the way, and it's not comparable to race. People try to say, oh, but can you be a trans dog, or can you be a trans black person or whatever? It's like, no, you're not trans species and you're not transracial. That is not a thing. It's not comparable, and I'll tell you why. Gender is a unique concept in and of itself. Biology is its own thing. No one is trying to say that they can magically become a different sex, because you can't. You get whatever surgeries you want to get. You're still whatever sex that you were before. But you have certainly tried to artificially, change the way that you appear, which is fine. It's your body. You do whatever you want with it. But being transracial, that's just not possible. You are the race that you are. You were born where you were born. You can't change it. Some people try, like I know there are people who have darker color skin who like sometimes will bleach their skin and stuff because they get picked on, they get bullied. If you have darker skin, you're subject to more discrimination, racism, and I know some people disagree with that, but it's just a fact. It's not for you to agree or disagree with. It's a reality, It's not up for debate. Ask anyone. Like, seriously. And actually listen, though. Don't just ask and then start arguing with them about their own life and experiences. Um, it's there, even though you want to believe it isn't. So, gender is different because people aren't trying to say that they're changing their sex or changing their gender. It's just that they're acknowledging their biology. They know what they were born as. They aren't trying to pretend that they were born somewhere else or as something else. They're just deciding to present differently, and they're allowed to do that. And the reason that I think of gender as a different thing is because gender is in so many other things, and there seems to be masculine and feminine characteristics and energy that goes beyond the physical form and biology and all of that. And this is proven when you have, for example, a really effeminate gay guy and a girl, just a regular straight girl, who are almost identical in their behavior, their mannerisms, everything. Their energy is almost non-discernible, indiscernible, whatever the word is. And that's relevant because biologically they're different. So they have a different sex, but their gender is kind of matching the same energy. They're vibrating on the feminine frequency is how I would word it. And some people just decide to own that as their identity. They want to fully vibrate on that frequency and present that way in society. And again, that is more how we came up with, like, gender roles of like women having long hair or dressing a certain way. We just made that up. Because if you go back far enough in history, that wasn't there. And if you look at other animals and other species, there are certain differences, like a lion having a mane. But in that case, the lion is the one with the longer hair, and the female lion doesn't have as short hair. So, you know what I mean? Like, there are differences, but the ones that we've decided on are more cultural rather than biological. So anyone telling you that it's biology, pay attention if they're actually talking about biology or not. So you're allowed to detest that and say, no, I want to dress and present as a female. Maybe you even want to get surgery to not necessarily, I mean, you're kind of changing your sex. It's just that you're not denying what you were born as. You know what I mean? It's not like you're in denial. And race can't be changed. It's not just skin color. Technically, skin color, as I mentioned, can be changed, at least for the most part. But you're not trying to pretend, you're not like saying you're a trans black person or a trans white person or trans Asian or anything. People who do that, it does not come from the same place that I'm talking about, because you can vibrate, like I said, on a feminine frequency or a masculine frequency. There's no such thing as vibrating on an Asian frequency or something. That's just how genetics develops, as depending on where you live. It's evolution. You're born in a place that has a hotter sun, you're going to evolve in a way that's better equipped to deal with that. You have longer eyelashes if there's a lot of sand. Like, I just learned that from a friend. Just only reason it was such a specific example. But still, like, we evolve and adapt based on where we are and what we have to deal with and what our ancestors had to deal with. It has nothing to do with something that's just innate, like gender, which is just very clearly masculine and feminine energies. So you can vibrate on either masculine or feminine energy frequencies at any given time. You might even change. Sometimes you might have a day where you're feeling really masculine or a day where you're feeling really feminine. You might be very balanced. You might be just right down the middle of those traits. And you might be really one or the other all the time. And that's okay. You don't even have to change your body. You don't have to get surgeries. You don't have to change anything about yourself. You can do whatever you want. And you can, but because it is your body, don't let anyone tell you what to do with your body. And if you regret transitioning, it shouldn't be illegal, because if your doctor explains to you the risks and you're of age to consent, and your doctor says, here's what's going to happen, here are the risks, and if you change your mind, here's what we could do then for you. And you make an informed decision on what you're doing to your body, and you say, yeah, I'm okay with these risks, I'll take it. And then you do it, and then if you change your mind down the line, hey, at least you knew the risks, and you can just go from there. And then don't stop and say, I'm broken, I'm ruined, now I have to join a conservative mentality and tell everyone that they should never be allowed to do this because I regretted it. Well, not everyone regrets it, actually. A lot of people don't regret it. And just because you regretted it doesn't mean you shouldn't have been allowed to do it. I have a feeling if you weren't allowed to do it, you would have been very annoyed, and you would have probably wondered for the rest of your life, what would have happened if you had done it? Maybe you needed to do it in order to find out that you didn't want to do it. And then you go from there. You're not broken. You can still take care of your body. You can still live your life and just work with what you got. So you're allowed to. It's not that big of a deal. And in general, people should be allowed to make decisions regarding their own body. But yeah, so it's just allowing people to express themselves in a way that makes them feel more authentic and less like they're trapped in something they don't want to be in. A good way to imagine, if you could just imagine waking up, let's say you're just a regular cisgender woman, for example, and you love your body, you feel beautiful, you love your female body. One day you wake up, you go to sleep, everything's fine. You wake up in the morning and you look down and you're hairy, your whole body's different, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? And you look in the mirror and you're like, who is this? This isn't my face, this isn't my body, what happened? Wouldn't you feel like you were screwed? Wouldn't you feel like you were just shoved into a situation you wanted desperately to get out of? And then someone said, hey, I have a surgery that can give you your old body back, at least, close enough. Wouldn't you want to take it if it was your only option? Probably. But the problem is people don't think of it that way. So they're just judgmental, but let people mind their own business. Nobody is trying to force you to do anything. Nobody's pushing an agenda. And if it is happening, maybe it's just because we have a for-profit medical system, and that should be what you're trying to attack. Capitalism. Stop attacking minorities and start acknowledging that minorities, when they become popular, capitalism's going to get a hold of it, and they're going to start promoting shit, and they're going to start trying to profit off of it. So, yeah, that's the problem. It's not the minorities themselves, it's the people who are trying to make money off of people. And just whatever gets people the most money. If it sells, it works. That's why you see all the woke leftist Hollywood and all that. There's no woke agenda. There's no elitist Hollywood leftist agenda. The people who actually are elite and have money only care about money. They couldn't give less of a shit about politics. They don't have a stake in it. They don't care about the left or the right. They care about the money, okay? And what they want is to do whatever gets them the most attention, the most money. So that's what they're going to do. Now, there are some people working in these positions who genuinely do have these beliefs, but that is coincidental. That's a person on the staff who has an opinion and is trying to integrate it into the movie. It's not some, you know, it's not some like amorphous, um, where you know what I mean? Like you can't even identify what it is. Like just some the Illuminati or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's you can't even give a name to it. It's just the woke agenda from Hollywood. Well, Hollywood is not a person, okay? There are people, there are financiers, there are, people who fund movies and do things. There are people who do things involving money and all they care about is money. And sometimes they're pitched ideas from people who genuinely have those opinions and beliefs. And if it gets picked up, it's because the person thinks it'll do well. And if it ends up not doing well, they're not going to do it again. Pay attention. Look at what happened with Bud Light. Partnering with Dylan Mulvaney, when that tanked, what did Bud Light do? They immediately backtracked and started trying to appeal to the conservatives again. So these companies do not believe in politics. They believe in money. And this is very evident if you pay attention. And again, these companies are not singular people with belief systems. It is multiple people, and what connects them is money. So, yeah, some people's beliefs will make their way in there. And sometimes it's not about beliefs, it's just about whatever happens to be popular and trendy. So just keep that in mind when you start yapping about woke leftist agendas and stuff. If you actually pay attention to what leftist people believe, it is 100% about freedom and giving people the autonomy to live their lives their own way instead of being forced to live their lives someone else's way. That's all it's about. And it's about safety so that they have the freedom to live without the fear of getting shot or beaten up or attacked or treated like they're subhuman by other people, so that the people who do those things have consequences. If you shoot people, if you try to treat someone like they're subhuman, if you beat someone up, if you kill someone, those actions will have consequences. And to me, that is freedom, because you should not have the freedom to take away other people's freedom. And that's essentially what you're doing in those instances. So, um, you know, live and let live, something like that. Yeah, but let's get back to explaining gender. So basically, masculine and feminine, they're energies that you can tap into at any time. So if you think that you're trans or non-binary, instead try to think of it as you're more on the feminine side, you're more on the masculine side, or you're balanced. And maybe you're even fluid. Maybe you go back and forth. Maybe you just change depending on your mood. And then you have to decide how you want to, reflect that in your everyday life. How do you want to change the way you dress, the way you present yourself, the way you behave? How do you want to change your body physically? What makes you uncomfortable to look at? And, can you make an educated, informed decision without just jumping on it and being impulsive and then regretting it later? Are you the type of person who regrets irreversible decisions and then you're like, oh, I really wish I hadn't done that, and then you dwell on it? Or are you more the type of person who would get a really bad tattoo and just say, whatever, I made my bed, I'll sleep in it, and then move on with your life? Like, ask yourself, historically, how do you react to decisions that you regret? Do you let it go or do you dwell on it? And, consider all of these things when you do anything irreversible to your body. So, how does this apply to other people? In general, don't really police other people's language. Don't tell other people how to think of you or how to refer to you. You can explain to them what I just explained if you want. But in general, your body, your prerogative, the way you behave, all of that, it's yours. And it's no one else's business. If they ask you a question, you can answer. You can tell them the truth. If someone is confused by you, they don't know if you're a man or a woman, then that's their problem. They're going to have to ask you. And if they don't ask you, then why worry about it? Why sweat about it? Just let it go. You're not going to hear them referring to you or talking about you. But if they walk up to you and they ask you, go ahead and tell them. My personal opinions on pronouns, I think that pronouns are designed to simplify language and make things easier. So he, him, she, her, to me are the easiest ones. I can't really wrap my head around they, them outside the context of referring to a hypothetical person. Oh, who's on the phone? No one. Well, what did they say? You know what I mean? That's hypothetical. But if you're looking at someone standing in front of you referring to them as they on purpose. Oh, my friend is coming over. They said this, or, to me, that doesn't roll off the tongue well, and it leaves so much room for confusion and ambiguity where you're like, are you referring to one person or multiple people? Because there are a lot of situations where you could say they in the context of referring to multiple people, and it is confusing. Um, so you're like, wait a minute, are you talking about him and his girlfriend? Or are you talking just about the non-binary they friend girlfriend, what I mean? I feel like in general, if you are truly non-binary, you're 50-50, then and even biologically, let's say hypothetically, you're 50-50, you have you know mix of chromosomes and all that, you have like mix of body parts. This happens, it's called intersex. Outdated terms like hermaphrodite if you're unfamiliar with an intersex, but you know if you're that and also energetically you're 50-50, then people probably aren't going to have a problem using neutral pronouns to refer to you because there's no logical alternative. You don't lean in one direction as far as other people are concerned. And like I said, your identity is your business. Other people are going to see you how they're going to see you. But if you truly present 50-50, people will probably use they them pronouns or just some form of neutral pronouns to refer to you because there's nothing about you that leans in one direction or another. But in my opinion, most non-binary people are clearly one or the other. It's like, okay, clearly that's a man. Clearly that is a biological male that I'm looking at, or clearly that's a biological female. There's no confusion there. That's what I'm looking at. It's very, very obvious to me. And because of that, it's hard to wrap your head around referring to that person with neutral pronouns. It doesn't compute. And my advice would be don't force it to. Ask that person how they feel, ask that person what they want or expect, and try to work with them. Try to come to some form of agreement with them. So I'm a little bit undecided on the they them pronouns. I've been undecided for a while. I haven't fully adapted it. I stand by that I would like it if everyone kind of dropped it. But at the same time, since people still request to be referred to with they them pronouns, I don't know. I don't want to do it knowing that they don't want me to, but at the same time, it still doesn't make sense to me. I can't like it doesn't compute. There are singers where it's like, okay, she posted this, and then I'm like, wait, I mean they posted this. I'm like, oh, it just sounds wrong as I say it, but then I feel like both options are wrong in one way or another. One way or another. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you can relate to this, but then there's people who've adapted it and they've just fully been like, yep, I've adapted they them into my language. I have a friend who refers to people as with neutral pronouns even if he knows their gender. He's like he would even refer to me as they, if he just didn't care to think enough, which is a good habit if you have a lot of non-binary friends. But I don't think we can expect everyone to adapt to it. I don't think it's realistic, and I think all it's going to do is steer people away from the idea altogether. And I really don't think pronouns, as I said earlier, are that big of a deal. Pronouns are for other people to refer to you when you're not there, and it's for other people to decide based on how you present, for the most part. Um, so yeah, I hope this made sense. This was a little longer than I wanted it to be, not by much though. Um, yeah, just give me your thoughts in the comments. I like having discussions about this. And again, no disrespect. Like truly, I'm not trying to tell you who you are. There's no element of that at all. It's just my opinion on language. Because like I said, I would not discount somebody's identity by not referring to them with the pronouns that they want. It's not about that. It's not an invalidation of your identity, at least not to me. So it shouldn't be to you either, because I'm not doing it for that purpose. I can just feel people getting annoyed with me. But then I'm also sure there are a lot of people who will agree with me, So I try my best to bridge gaps. Hopefully this video is a good example of that. Have a good rest of your day or night, and thank you very much for tuning in. I go live every Friday at 8 p.m. excuse me, not necessarily always live. Excuse me. At 8 p.m., I will premiere or live stream a new episode of Fallen World, which is the series you're watching right now, Eastern Time every Friday. And on my other channel, link to that channel is in the description, I have another show on there called Just Between Us, and I premiere or live stream new episodes of that at 8 p.m. every Sunday, Eastern Time. So check that out if you're interested. Just Between Us is more of a casual discussion type show, and this is more of a focused, let me just give you my opinion on something type show. So that's the difference, mainly. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate every like, comment, and subscription, and I will see you next week or on Sunday on my other channel.